RuneScape 3 is launching its first ever leagues later on this year, and I'd imagine that this is going to be bringing in a lot of old school RuneScape players back to RuneScape for the first time in years, possibly even ever, which is exactly why inside of this series, I've been breaking down each and every single region inside of RuneScape 3 and kind of comparing it to old school RuneScape. So, if in fact they do implement the region lock system inside of this league, we're all hopefully a little bit more prepared for which regions we want to select. Today, we're going to be diving into RuneScape's hottest region, and that, of course, is the desert. And the Caridian Desert in RuneScape 3 is really jam-packed with content. You have quests that really dive in and expand the storyline to Menaphos, opening up this entire city for you to do a bunch of skilling activities in. But there's also quests like Jack of Trades, Crocodile Tears, and Do No Evil, all of which introduce new characters and really deepen the lore of the Caridian Desert. Personally, I'm not much of a quester myself, but if you're into that kind of thing, the desert definitely has you covered. But let's go ahead and move on and talk about some of the different areas that you have out here in the desert, because I mentioned Menaphos earlier, and I feel it's important to really dive in on exactly what's going on here. If you choose the desert region inside of this league, this is probably going to be one of your main hubs out here for skilling amongst tasks, I'm assuming. Menaphos really being an excellent place for you to train up your fishing and woodcutting. However, there's several skilling activities out here, from thieving down to divination. Like I said, if you pick the desert region, you're probably going to be spending a lot of time in Menaphos. An interesting bit to this is the fact that Menaphos also has a reputation system that is somewhat similar to that of Corinne inside of old school RuneScape. But let's go ahead and move on and talk about some of the bossing opportunities that you'll be unlocking in the desert, because the only shared boss between the two games is the Calphite Queen. In old school RuneScape, you have things such as the raids with Tombs of Amasket. However, in RuneScape 3, you gain access to bosses such as the Calphite King, which is where you're going to get yourself Drygore tier 90 melee weapons. But there are also little side mini bosses, mini game bosses, if you will, such as the Dominion Tower out here, which is actually going to gain you access to something called Dread Nips, which are less useful nowadays. However, they still have some sort of use case when it comes to putting out extra damage when you're bossing. You also have things such as the Sophanem Slayer dungeon, which is an experience in itself with its whole auto looting system that it has going on in there. But with it comes a Slayer boss, actually, the Magister, which drops some tier 85 melee gloves. The Magister boss inside of this Slayer dungeon is not one to be slept on either, because you can receive scraps of scripture from this boss that can be combined into a Blessing of the Sea, Blessing of the Sky, or Blessing of the Sand, all three of which you can then combine with the Khopesh of the Caridian, which is a tier 82 melee weapon that you can get from this dungeon. But you can combine these blessings with that weapon in order to craft the tier 92 melee main hand and offhand, because this is a dual wield tier 92 that you can craft from the Magister here. This Slayer dungeon is definitely something that you'll be doing a lot of if you choose to unlock the desert region. Probably one of the biggest draws, in my opinion, especially with the fact that you can push yourself all the way up to 120 Slayer now. So let's go ahead and move on and talk about some of the skilling activities out here, because in both games you have Pyramid Plunder and the Agility Pyramid. But jumping into RuneScape 3, they add in something called the Shifting Tombs. This is a minigame inside of Menaphos that blends agility and thieving, and also provides some decent rewards. And while out here in the desert of RuneScape 3, there is no Temporos for you to take advantage of, gaining you access to easy fishing levels and easy fish, there is, like I said, Menaphos, which does have several fishing spots for you to train at, amongst all of the other skills that Menaphos has to offer. Essentially, if you pick the desert region, Menaphos is going to be where you want to go to knock out some training. But I think it's also worth mentioning that the desert region actually gives you access to the very first archaeology dig site. And if they do in fact implement the whole region lock system, having access to this very first dig site here could be a massive benefit. But like I've said in previous videos, it is entirely possible that they end up not going with a region lock system. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Also, it's been a couple years since I've jumped into RuneScape 3 to play it on a regular basis. So leave a comment down below if I happened to miss anything big that the desert has to offer. Keep an eye out on the channel because I'm going to be breaking down a new region every single day this week. I've got a playlist for you to check out if you've happened to miss any of the other regions. Also, we're going to be going live right here on YouTube and Twitch for this league, amongst other things, with those lives really starting to kick back into full gear with a complete schedule starting in May. So keep an eye out for that. But really, that's all that I wanted to break down today. I hope you guys all have an amazing day. I'm out.